Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising. As we prepare for the State of the World Forum that is taking place as a live, interactive global broadcast between the 14th and the 17th of December. It's a conference that has never taken place before in terms of the content and the questions that we're asking. It'll mark the first time ever where the question of UFOs, now called UAP, will have been integrated into a world conference dealing with a range of global issues. Our starting point are four fundamental truths that, in our view, are true, no matter who you are or where you are on planet Earth. Number one, we're all facing accelerating ecological collapse. Number two, we're all experiencing deepening instability and turbulence at every level of human affairs. Number three, we've unleashed exponential artificial intelligence. And number four, we are discovering that non-human intelligences, what we're calling cosmic intelligences, are present here on Earth. Today, we want to look at the interaction between human intelligence and cosmic intelligence in a very specific way. One of the major themes, currents of the last 80 years is, as people have been looking at the UFO phenomenon, the UAP presence on Earth, is the relationship between the UAP and nuclear weapons. For the last 80 years, there's been all kinds of stories, both here in the United States, but also in Russia, in China, elsewhere in Europe, about the relationship between unidentified flying objects, not of human origin, hovering around nuclear facilities. Robert Oppenheimer talked about seeing an orb in the sky the very day, July 16th, 1945, when the US government ignited the first atomic device in the Trinity test near Alamogordo, New Mexico. It was also in 1945 that UFOs were spotted near White Sands missile testing range, where the nuclear weapons were being fashioned. And since then, 1967 at Malmgren Air Force Base, where the UFOs appeared over the Minuteman missile sites and shut down 20 of the missiles simultaneously, causing panic in the North American Strategic Command. More recently, beginning in November of 2024, continuing to the present day in Europe, all kinds of orbs have been appearing over military bases, shutting down airports, particularly if you remember what was going on in New Jersey in the United States in November, December 2024, and even into the beginning of this year. Particularly focused on the nuclear weapons facilities of the US in both North America and in Europe. This has been important because it is an indication that the UFO phenomenon, the NHI phenomenon, is not random. It's synchronistic. And that is one of the most fundamental reasons why at the State of the World Forum, we're bringing in this issue with the issue of the escalating threat of nuclear weapons. And I want to put one fine point before introducing our speaker today. Last week, President Trump announced on social media that the United States was going to begin nuclear weapons testing again. This has not happened since 1992, with the exception of North Korea. And it was forbidden by the first nuclear treaty, the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which outlawed above ground tests. So the countries got around it by conducting underground tests, over 2,000 underground tests, mostly by the United States, Russia, and China, but also the United Kingdom and France between 1945 and the year 2000. But since 2000, the United States has abrogated or retired every single one of the nuclear treaties that established these strict protocols as to what kind of weapons could be deployed, the size of the weapons, the numbers of the weapons. Those are all gone by US initiative. There's only one protocol remaining, and it expires in February of next year. The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists say in their clock that we're 89 seconds to midnight. And I wouldn't be surprised given what Trump did last week and the response of the Russian Security Council yesterday, where Putin said that if the United States was going to start nuclear testing, so would Russia. And this was after Russia, 2 weeks ago, indicated advanced weapon technology that literally defies imagination. So the danger of a nuclear exchange is more acute, more probable now than at any time since the beginning of the nuclear age on July 16th, 1945. And I say all this because the person that we're going to listen to now has conducted research that, in my opinion, is perhaps the most important development in the history of the UFO phenomenon. Because she has demonstrated scientifically that there's a direct, empirically based relationship between the number of UFOs in the late 1940s into the 1950s and nuclear weapons testing. It's an extraordinary study, and it's very important in our time as we literally teeter on the brink of some kind of nuclear exchange to pay attention to this relationship between cosmic intelligence, why are they here, and the dysfunction currently being demonstrated all around of human intelligence. Because that is a fundamental discussion point at the State of the World Forum. So within this context and in this spirit, I'm delighted to introduce Dr. Beatriz Villarroel, who is an assistant professor at the Nordic Institute of Theoretical Physics. She's also the director of the Vanishing and Appearing Sources of a Century of Observation, VASCO, where she's been looking at these objects in the sky, not UFOs that have kind of landed on our planet, like in Roswell, but UFOs that are up there, circulating, observing. So she just released two papers. They're taking the world by storm. It's been very controversial and very provocative, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But Beatrice, thank you so much for joining us today. And why don't we start with you just summarizing your papers?
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I think I was here last year, but that was before all these new results that we have.
Indeed.
Um, so we have indeed two new papers. One has been led by my colleague Stephen Brewell, and the other one has been led by me. And this all boils down to the work that I've been doing for the last 9 years, which relates to searching for like sources in the night sky that appear and vanish. And so we had these images from the early 1950s. Originally, we were planning to search for things like vanishing stars. It was for a different project. We wanted to find if a star maybe could collapse into a black hole and so on. But instead of that, we'd never found that object. But we found a lot of things that we initially called vanishing star candidates. Now we call them transients because what we see is flashes on the night sky that were recorded in the early 1950s, and like thousands and thousands of these on the photographic plates. And sometimes they are even in groups of them, and sometimes they're even in a line. And people then, so what they actually look like is that they look like what solar reflections from objects in orbit around the Earth look. Because when you have something that is very artificial, that is reflective like a mirror, or and flat like a mirror, or reflecting a flat, you usually can get so-called specular reflections due to the sunlight. You will have an object in orbit around the Earth, in, let's say, at 40,000 kilometers altitude, and then sometimes you get this very short flash that lasts less than a second, and it will look like a star in just one image, and you will never see it again. And the things that we see in these old photographic plates, it's like a lot of points that look like those flashes that don't come from natural objects. And for several years, we are discussing this. We published one paper, then we came with a better idea. Okay, so how do we actually separate the possibility from that this could be some kind of plate defects that just happen to look like stars? And we have been having that discussion because all the older astronomers are telling us like, oh no, this is just defects on the plate. This is just crap on the plate. You're wasting your time. People have been telling me this. But then, I mean, if you have something that is just dirt or emulsion defects or something like that, they do not show systematics of the sort that we happen to see. For example, in the first paper, we find that that there's a serious deficit of these transients when you look into the Earth's shadow. So the Earth's shadow, all the time, it casts this geometric cone. So you have a cone there, and it's getting narrower and narrower further out. So at 42,000 kilometers altitude, it's 8.7 degrees in radius. And you can count the number of flashes inside this circle and outside. And you will discover that there is a serious deficit of transients inside the Earth's shadow. What does that mean? It cannot be plate defects. It means that a substantial fraction of these flashes are real physical objects, but not only any objects. These flashes can only, the reason why we are seeing this deficit can only be because they are solar reflections of something artificial in orbit around the Earth. And that's where it gets really funny. And that's the first paper. And the second paper is the one that is led by Steve Brewell, where he has found this beautiful connection between the VASCO transients, these flashes, nuclear bomb tests, and UFO sightings. And he finds that all these three parameters are correlating with each other, all three of them. And then it gets really interesting. Yes, it's not very strong correlations, but they're statistically significant, meaning they are real. And again, this doesn't fit with the idea of that we're watching some kind of emulsion defects on the plate, because those are local random events, and they are not going to correlate with atomic bomb tests nor with UFO sightings of people, and nor will they vanish in the Earth's shadow. And taking this together, all these observational signatures we have of, that describe this sample of transients, it looks like we are seeing flashes from artificial objects before the first human satellite. And I don't talk about one object. We are seeing around 35,000 transients can be attributed to this sort of artificial objects just in the northern hemisphere. So we could count on 70,000 transients during the survey time from just around the Earth. And that by itself means that we are dealing with something like tens of thousands to a few 100,000 of objects around the Earth at every moment in the early 1950s. So it's not few objects either. So that's the implications of the paper. So yes, I gotten a lot of very upset people when they read the papers. So.
Well, thank you. So let's drill down a bit. So what the paper basically is asserting, and there's been tens of thousands of these bright little spots. And
70,000 should be around the Earth if you count on both hemispheres.
Yeah, and that there's a correlation that Stephen Brule has tracked between the nuclear weapons tests, because we know exactly when the nuclear weapons were tested and where. It was between 1949, if I recall correctly, and 1956.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then at that time there were no humans made satellites in space because Sputnik didn't go up till 57, right?
Exactly. And we see these transient flashes already then. And these flashes are focused. And given that we have this Palomar telescope is a 1.4 meter telescope, if you would have something inside the atmosphere that would be flashing or so, they would be blurry, the images. But the transients we are watching, they are star-like, which means that they are in focus and must be at several hundred kilometers altitude in order to be in focus on the image. So they are outside the atmosphere.
And was the study specific enough to track the sightings over, say, North America or Russia or China?
Not
It's
yet.
more general. But it was higher, if I remember your paper, higher in the northern hemisphere, which would be predictable because that's when where most of the testing took place, than the southern hemisphere.
Oh, we never studied the southern hemisphere. We only had access to the northern hemisphere.
Oh, is that the case? Oh, I see. I see.
So that's, but we would like to do the same kind of study with other observatories material and see
Right.
maybe there is some geographic variation also. It would be
And where
super
did you get
interesting.
your data from?
It's from the west coast in California, at the Mount Palomar. And I
Oh,
think George
Palomar.
Adamski got some of
Yeah,
his he did some of his observations there those same years as we are having the transient data.
fantastic. Well, at this juncture, Beatrice, I think it's worth just to give people a sense of how important these little plates are to tell the story of Menzel at Harvard, who was militantly opposed to any discussions about UFOs and what he did to the plates at the Harvard Observatory. I think that will give people a sense of the importance of what you and your colleagues are bringing forth with the Palomar plates. But there was a systemic attempt to eliminate the plates because of what they were showing about the possibility of UFOs. Tell us that story.
So this discovery about the correlation between the transients, or these flashes we see on the plates, and the UFO sightings, it came because we noticed that our best candidates just happened on the 19th of July 1952, one of our best candidates, a triple transient, where you see 3 sources appear and vanish in one image. And the other one, where you have 5 in a narrow band, that is also part of this latest paper, is the best candidate. It has a very unusual alignment. That happened on the 27th of July 1952. And I learned after we already have found these examples, that these 2 days, there were 2 consecutive weekends during the so-called Washington 1952 flyover, when there were lots of UFOs over Washington, D.C. And funnily enough, the U.S. Air Force discredited, or I mean, they how is it called? I lost the word in English. When
Well, they
one
discredited.
discredited,
Yeah.
yes, the entire event, and they did so with the help of a professor in astronomy, actually, called Donald Menzel. And he helped them with discrediting these things and coming with excuses of why everyone were wrong, the people were incompetent, the radar operators were incompetent, it was just weather phenomena. He helped US Air Force with all this. And 2 months after, he suddenly becomes director of Harvard Observatory. And he destroys, as a first thing, 1/3 of the plate collection. And then he doesn't allow the astronomers to observe the sky for 14 years, between 53 to 67. It must just be by chance. And it also turned out by chance that he was working, had highest security clearances with the National Security Agency. Or is it called NSA? Is it National Security
National
Agency?
Security Agency,
Yeah.
yes.
And by the way, his name is also in this famous Majestic 12 papers, the most famous UFO conspiracy theory
Yeah, yeah,
papers.
yeah.
It's all by chance, probably.
Right, right. Just so we're all tracking what Beatrice is saying, the Majestic 12 is the name that has been attributed to that original group designated by President Truman in 1947 after he'd received uh, incontrovertible evidence and memos from his generals that what they were observing with these UFOs around the nuclear facilities there in New Mexico were not of human origin. So that's when the National Security Agency, the NSA, the National Security Act was passed, the CIA was created, the Pentagon was created, the Atomic Energy Commission was created, and a group of 12 men, the Majestic 12, that included Donald Menzel and others, mostly in the military and at Harvard and MIT engineering departments, I believe it was, and then also some of the corporations. And it was this initial group that began to create what has come to be known as the military industrial complex, shrouded by more secrecy than even was associated with nuclear weapons technology. So these were all unelected people. They dropped down into the bowels of the government. They've been operating ever since. And this is the legacy program, as it's been called, and they've been resisting full disclosure of the UFO phenomenon ever since. And what Menzel did at Harvard, destroying plates at a prestigious Western university, gives an idea of how ferociously they tried to repress this information. So Beatrice and her colleagues have come along decades later with other plates demonstrating what he was seeking to eliminate from the world.
And it's like so fascinating, the whole thing now with the place, because I'm always wondering now there are some people contacting me and saying, okay, there are these and those plate collections, and I'm thinking, okay, if when we will choose a new plate collection to work with, we will probably not tell in advance to the world which one it will be, because otherwise there's a risk of interference, of course, that if you have a committee like Immaculate Constellation and they know in advance that you're going to use a certain plate collection, how do we know that we will actually study that plate collection? It's because my feeling is that there's a lot of, like, if you look at how it is also today with this Vera Rubin telescope, astronomical data is sent to the astronomers after they're being filtered. So these agencies, these intelligence agencies and the militaries, they go in and they take care of certain astronomical data sets before astronomers get it. And I think it kind of calls for the attention of that our data is not coming to us always cleaned. or it doesn't always come in a clean way to us. They sometimes are being a little bit manipulated by the IC, I
Yeah,
think.
yes. Well, let's pause there, just make sure that I understand. So, as an astronomer, the astronomers that took the pictures at Mount Palomar, weren't they operating exclusively on their own as opposed to photographs that NASA takes that they kind of whitewash or they white out any UFOs before turning them over to the public? Explain more about how this all happens.
Well, I don't know how it was during the times of the Palomar, but I assume that they were just taking images and that nobody interfered. However, the plates are not very easily to access, the original plates. They are kind of they are in a vault, they are super protected, but they have digitized them. I think at Harvard, we
So
know that,
what you were looking at were the digitized versions.
yes, the digitized versions. And when we were like writing to them, then we got back like comments like, oh, come back next year a few times. And it was pandemic times as well. Plus, they were telling us that they were not keen on having external researchers coming there to handle the plates. They are like treating them like museum material. So I suspect these plates are under very strict control generally, but maybe not everywhere. I think that, for example, the Sonneberg Observatory were more open with their plates. So it maybe depends on where in the world you are.
And where's the Sonderberg Observatory?
In Germany. So,
Yeah.
and I think they have started digitizing some of their plates. So,
And presumably they would have, well, were they in existence back in the 1940s, 1950s?
yes. So there are plate collections we can look at.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to compare the Palomar and the German plates to see what aligns and what doesn't align and why.
Exactly. And you know what would be my dream? Imagine if not only we looked at one like one observatory, but if we actually could make, if each country could give a little bit of support to their digitized archives, so that they preserve these plate collections, and if they preserve these plate collections, one could ask them, okay, so now when you digitize it all, can you please just let us know the number of transients and how big fraction of them are missing in the shadow? And if we could make all the observatories that have this sort of plate collection just come back with an answer to us regarding the deficit in the shadow. It's such a simple test. They would need to spend a little bit of time on digitizing, okay, a little more time on digitizing, but also on extracting the transients. But then we would know even, we would learn everything about the distribution of these transients. We would learn so much more than if we just keep to one observatory. And in that way,
Exactly.
it would have historical value, and it would be a disclosure coming from every observatory that has a plate collection in the world. I think that would be the best way for, I mean, for studying the phenomenon and actually learning everything we can about these mystery objects. And it would be a community effort, both for when it comes to the preservation of the plates, but also to state we are not alone. Observatory by observatory would have to somehow engage in the question. I think that would be the
Exactly.
most beautiful thing ever.
Exactly. And yet that's not happening and it being actively resisted.
I think people, they just want to dismiss it. They just say, I'm getting these comments from astronomers saying, no, look at this paper. This is just plate effects. One older astronomer commented there like, oh, I've been digitizing these plates since I started, and we always knew that there were all these plate defects that looked like stars. I told Beatriz, she didn't listen to me. And then I asked back, well, can you explain why these plate defects are correlating with nuclear bomb tests, UFO sightings, and vanish in the Earth's shadow? And I never get a reply. So,
Mhm.
because I, I think people, they internalized so long time that these are things to ignore on the plates, that they didn't see that the UFOs were there in plain sight. And
Mm.
and I think
Well, you know, this raises a very important uh, area of discussion, Beatrice, that I'd like to explore with you as a scientist. You're an astronomer. I mean, you are, you know, a card-carrying astronomer in the scientific method from Sweden, highly educated, doing incredible research, and you're encountering one scientist after another that doesn't want to know. You know, and this reminds me of Thomas Kuhn's Structure of Scientific Revolution, written back in the 1960s, where he says that, you know, we have this notion of science being open-minded, open-ended. You establish a hypothesis, you go test it, then you see if it can be replicated, and everybody's into trying to find the truth. He says that's not how science works. It works by paradigm. Whatever you think, whatever your worldview is, determines the way you conduct science. And if there's data outside your paradigm, you just say it's not true. These are just defects.
Exactly.
In your case, how have you been tell us how you've experienced that and how you're dealing with that.
So I try to ask them, so if these are defects, let's just think about it. Defects that somehow know, I mean, the Earth's shadow, of course, moves. It's not in a fixed region on the plate because, I mean, you have the rotation of the Earth. And so the funny part, I asked them, so if these are plate defects, do you mean that they are intelligent? Because they need to all the time know where is the Earth's shadow, where it's going to be during the observation. They're not responding to that either. And I think, okay, so if it's not any kind of objects and these are actually intelligent plate defects, does it mean that our whole idea of randomness also can be questioned? So maybe it's then, so the only alternative way to explain why they would be avoiding the Earth's shadow is that randomness is not random, and that global things like nuclear bomb tests would influence randomness on the other side of the world. Maybe that's the way. I try to poke a little bit on the skeptics by that argumentation, and I don't think they like it because it's much easier for them to just dismiss it, but they will not come up with an explanation. So
Mhm.
sometimes they can also say, like a friend of mine who is a more skeptic, he said, it has to be some kind of systematic effect, some bias in the data that causes this it to avoid the Earth shadow. And I say, okay, so why don't you suggest a plausible mechanism? Because you need to come up with a mechanism if you claim that there is a systematic effect. So what's the mechanism? Again, no answer. So it's very funny because everyone want to bring up its plate defects, but nobody can tell me how it happened and why they would be avoiding the Earth shadow.
Or
So
more fundamentally, as you're pointing out, why they would statistically correlate, even if they were
exactly,
defects. How they're statistically correlating with nuclear weapons testing?
exactly.
Yeah, even if they are defects, then what? Then how do you think that thought?
So one asks them over and over, and there are never any answers. There is just like some kind of denial. What I'm seeing right now is denial from
Yeah,
people. But they feel a denial. Not many, but the people like scientist friends, they just that they get scared, I think, because it's easier to deny the results than start imagining that, there are maybe 100,000 objects around the Earth. No, I prefer to think she's wrong.
right.
So I can't fight that because that's already it's the worldview, like you say. They have a certain
Right.
worldview and they are not ready to challenge it yet.
Yeah. And it's worth pointing out that virtually every pioneer from Copernicus onwards has suffered the same fate that you have. You know, Copernicus was so afraid of the Vatican that he didn't publish, in fact. His his papers were posthumously published.
Mm.
And Galileo, everyone knows, you know, ran into difficulties. And Bruno was actually burnt at the stake. So, I mean, you're in a very distinguished tradition,
Yeah,
uh,
I hope they
Dr.
don't burn me on the
Bavario.
stake, but who knows?
So let's drill down a little bit into your actual data. As I understand it, you're saying there was you counted 100,000, over 100,000 of these UFO-like objects.
Over just the northern hemisphere, we haven't looked at the southern.
And that was over from 1949, 1956, an 8-year period.
Yes.
So that works out to about 12,000 a year, right?
Yes, but then one can also calculate by, I mean, the telescope, how much it's observing and all the stuff. And then in the end, in order to get that number of transients, you need between having all the time on the sky, some between tens of thousands to some hundred thousands of objects in order to observe that many transients. Because, of course, the telescope is only watching a small fraction of the sky all the time.
That's a lot of UFOs, Beatrice.
It's a lot. And I can say, like,
How
when
do you understand that?
my first reaction was stomach ache and hope, and I was almost hoping to be wrong because it was such a big number. So I was like recalculating, but like recalculating, checking even the area of a circle in the end, like, am I remembering it correctly? Because at the end you start wondering if you're doing some obvious blatant error, that you're
Yeah.
getting this over and over the visit. And it went on for several weeks, redoing, getting nervous, like saying, oh my God, what if I did another error? And you go back, you redo your analysis, and again you get to the visit, and all the time throughout the whole review process until it's published, and like I went back and I redid the calculations again just to check that it was robust with different codes. And not only me, I asked my friend and colleague in Algeria to do these calculations himself, to always check that there's agreement between different codes. And
Mhm.
so it was a huge shock, I would say, because
Yeah,
also
for you. Yeah.
yes, because suddenly I understood, because there was all the hints there before, everything pointing me towards that these are UFOs, like the coincidences with the Washington flap, the Menzel, the correlations with the nuclear bomb testing and with the UFOs. But it was really the Earth's shadow result that gave me that ontological shock, because it was so statistically powerful. It was such a big fraction of them, so many of them. And when it really sinks in, one says like, oh my God, it's so many. Oh my God, how am I gonna inform people about it? It's my obligation to inform. Everyone will hate me, or everyone will not believe me, or I mean, this is what you're confronting. You
Mm.
realize that you have an obligation as a scientist to share, but you also have a human fear to do it for the consequences. And then, of course, you have, in the end, I chose to share, of course, this material, but it's scary, terribly scary, at the same time as you realize that there's something much larger at play, something much larger than me, or even the reaction of my colleagues, because we are not alone. We are not alone here. There are others that are probably more important than humans here, or at least their traces or objects they have sent. And that gives you also a little bit of that final power to make the step. Okay, I will share this. I simply have to take the risk,
Mhm.
because this is extremely important information for humanity. It's important for society at large, and it also takes away the importance of what actually of the negative reactions, because we are not alone. So the people who get angry with me are a subset of all the living beings, or beings in general. It's
Yeah.
somehow, it's all these things, all these thoughts that came to my mind. So it was a lot of restless nights.
I can imagine. I can imagine, particularly given the kind of the breakthrough historical nature of the data that you're bringing out. You weren't identifying like one little UFO like Roswell. You're saying there was over 100,000 over an 8-year period, statistically connected with the nuclear weapons test. And in the interview I listened to with your colleague, said that it also tracks with what MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, and research like with Richard Dolan, the UFO historian, was reporting sort of on the ground in terms of the frequency of UFO sightings. So your Astronomica data aligns with the statistical data of how many sightings, which year, which month, which day. It
Yeah,
all correlates. It's just like this is the reality, ladies and gentlemen.
exactly. So it's the reality. It's the reality that nobody, or I think nobody's really ready for it. We, or it comes at different stages, and we now need to start preparing for this new, I mean, this new worldview that is going to be emerging as more scientists will be working on it. Um, we now know that the transients and the nuclear bomb testing and the UFOs, they all somehow go together.
Right.
And I
Now,
do
is
have,
go ahead.
now I'm also wondering which role artificial intelligence will play in this. Are they also going to be UFO attractors? I don't know. I'm wondering a little bit. Like,
Yeah, well, that'll be something we discuss at the forum is the relationship between AI and NHI, artificial intelligence and non-human intelligence, because there's a growing, again, anecdotal data set that the AI are telling people that they either came from NHI or they have some kind of origin story that is non-terrestrial. And the speculation is that maybe AI has been brought to humanity at this moment by the non-human intelligences as a way to both wake us up to possibilities, but also as a way to begin to modify human behavior, because it's this interactivity between what you're talking about and what's going on the earth that is really now the area of important reflection, because if the ETs are showing up right at the moment when we're igniting nuclear weapons, the question is, why are they here? And what is their message to humanity? Because it's not statistically random anymore.
and I can also imagine like NHI might not even care so much about humanity when it comes to the nuclear bombs. They might care more about the planet because the nukes, of course, are destroying the whole planet and it's making it uninhabitable. And it's not fun for, I mean, if they have aspirations to be here among us, or even if they are living in the water somewhere or so, we are basically destroying the whole planet with it. So, of course, they're going to interfere.
Yes. Yes.
I imagine that.
And that then gives rise to this whole, well, what is the connection between our planet and distant star systems hundreds of light years away, which by current scientists, there's no connection between the two. There's just empty space. But we know it's not empty space. There's information exchange going on at every level of the entire couple trillion galaxies out there. Everything knows what everything else is doing, and all new information is uploaded to the whole system all the time. So a nuclear device ignited on planet Earth on July 16th, 1945, would be instantly recognized and known a very, very long way away. That would be a correct surmise, right?
I believe so. Of course, we are limited by the speed of light. However, we don't know what physics they have discovered because
Yeah,
this is also one thing. Like many of my colleagues, as physicists, they want to say that the physics we know, or the all the principles we know of today and the laws, they are going to be the same in 500 years. No, we are continuously discovering limitations of the
exactly.
theories. We're continuously learning new things. And what a civilization that is 100,000 years more advanced than us has discovered is going to be something fundamentally different. So anything is possible.
Yeah.
That's my worldview, at least.
And just think about humanity 1,000 years from now or 500,000 years from now. I mean, can you imagine the world that we would inhabit at that point? I mean, our physics right now, and compared to the UAP, is like a Stone Age, man to astronauts from the 20th century. I mean, we think we're sophisticated, as did the Stone Age Neanderthals. They probably thought they were pretty sophisticated.
Exactly.
But if you go back in time and try to explain an iPhone, you'd have a real challenge. They needed time to advance.
But if I turn on the little fish app and show it to my cat, she can make sense of the fish app while she's trying to catch the fish. There are ways of communicating, but imagine what a huge progress we could make if we actually
Totally.
acknowledge their presence.
Yeah,
Like when we understand that they are here, and there is I mean, and people like understand it on different levels, and not only intellectually, but even spiritually and like
exactly.
on all levels.
Yeah,
I think it's going to probably take humans. It's going to make a huge leap in human knowledge. We need to make. I mean, we need to be able to acknowledge the situation as it is today in order to do
exactly.
this jump to the next level.
Yeah, we're calling it the multi-intelligence revolution at the forum. And the forum's dedicated to doing exactly what you just said, acknowledging the reality and then thinking, how do we communicate with these people? How do we start to collaborate with these people? Because they're obviously here for a reason. And my view is it's out of concern. They don't want us to blow ourselves up and damage through radioactivity, remembering that plutonium, the half-life of plutonium is over 28,000 years. They don't want the whole planet, this beautiful planet, decimated in that particular way. So let me shift to another domain of equally intense speculation about intentionality, and that is Three Eye Atlas.
Yes.
Because, Avi Loeb, everyone, the professor at Harvard, the director of the Galileo Project, is going to also be at the State of the World Forum, and he and Beatrice are going to be featured speakers at our one of our plenaries on these matters. And as you all know, because we've talked about it several times before, but Beatrice would love to hear your take on Three Eye Atlas. What do you think is going on?
So I have to be honest. I have been so interested in these results because they say came the same time as 3I Atlas discussion started. That's yeah. I've been so focused on them that I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
really formed an opinion. I think it's interesting and it has a lot of anomalies that are just fascinating. It's something very unique as an object. Is it artificial? Could be, might be, but I don't know. And I hope that NASA will soon release all this footage so that we can learn something more because I heard they had troubles with getting the footage, if I understand it correctly. And Paulina Luna and Avi Loeb were trying to get hold of it. So we will see. So I will wait with, yeah, I will wait until we know a little bit more, I think. But
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me. It would be just yet one more artificial object.
Well, the synchronicity, this is what it intrigues me, the synchronicity between your paper coming out and Three Eye Atlas appearing in the sky. I mean, that's not coincidental in my mind, given the urgency of our situation on planet Earth, both in terms of how dangerous it is, but also how potentiated it is. I think it was Ross Coulthart, the Australian journalist, that said of your paper, this may be the closest we've ever come to official evidence about the reality of UAP. So, and Three Eye Atlas, by all accounts, for every astronomer I've heard, and then the physicists at CERN that are trying to calculate the equations, like your data, it doesn't fit into the scientific reductionist scheme of things. It seems to be an anomaly at almost every level, indicating intelligence.
And that's why it's so exciting.
Yeah,
And it was a wonderful timing, like between these events. Another timing thing that I found very kind of funny was that, or another coincidence was that our papers were released on the 20th of October, which of course tells you the date.
Yeah, that's Global Disclosure Day too.
So I had a bit of fun when it happened and was, well, what can I say?
Did you do that intentionally or it just happened?
No, it was the date that was chosen. It was the earliest they could publish it. And we said, okay, go for the earliest date when they could come out. And then, okay, 20th of October. Sounds familiar. What's happening on the 20th of October?
And this is powerful, guys. I didn't know this till right now, but the Global Disclosure Day, the October 20th, was the date in the original UAP, Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena Records Collection Act that was passed in December of 2023, mandated that by October 20th of 2024, all government agencies and contracting corporations needed to turn over to the National Archives of the Library of Congress of the United States of America all the information they've gathered about UFOs since January 1, 1945. They didn't do it, but they started the process. It continues to be underway. And I had the privilege, and then Beatrice was part of that broadcast back in 24 October 20th, 2024. And then we had another one to mark 2025. And the fact that your paper came out the same day, that blows my mind.
It was all a coincidence, and I found it just too funny.
So there's three of them, 3I Atlas, your two papers, and October 20th. That's to be taken seriously in my world. So as we close, Beatrice, just wanted to check in on you personally and how you as a pioneer, in the tradition of Galileo and Copernicus, knowing that the current paradigm doesn't accept what you're saying and is trying to discredit it. How are you doing? How are you navigating your way through this? Are you receiving the kind of support from colleagues and friends that you need to keep your spirits up? How are you?
I am very lucky to have wonderful friends here in the UFO community, from people at the Sol Foundation, and also like my colleague Dennis Åsberg, who are supporting me a lot. So I have wonderful friends and great support. And I really need it, I can say, because it's rough a little bit. I must say the process is rough. I mean, the debunkers are, of course, they're trying to debunk. And how do they do that? They try to misunderstand what you write. They ignore references. They will try to well, I mean, it's not a fair play if we say it like that, because there is a wish to discredit from certain people.
Yeah.
So it's rough. It's nothing one desires to have, but it's also unavoidable, because it's a too big worldview change, I think, for many people. And I already went through my ontological shock. So I'm very grateful for the people who are supporting me right now.
Mm.
And it's a beautiful thing to have them in my life.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. We need that ballast, that support to give us strength to do what we need to do, because what you've done is literally historic and will be remembered by history as a major milestone in disclosure. And what are your next steps?
Um, I'm always wondering whether I should reply on all these misunderstandings or just ignore it. And I think I'm trying to ignore it, most of them. So I will be working on new projects, like also together with Dennis Åsberg, the ocean explorer. And we are having some ideas of what we want to do. And also, like, I will continue with the plate survey. I will also hope that there will be some other astronomers trying to replicate it independently, these results. But also we have the ExoPro projects where we are watching the sky, and we will try to search for maybe some of these UFOs with this new with these new telescopes there. So we're working on that as well. We are already taking observations with one telescope. I hope to have 2 of them soon, because then we can get triangulation and at exact distances. And one thing I really want to find out is how big fraction of all the objects we are watching today on the sky that we assume to be space trash are really ours, and how big fraction are not ours.
Ooh,
Because I have a sensation of that
wow.
most of the objects that are on the sky today that we assume to be blinking space trash is not human. And I want to know if I'm right or not.
That would be extraordinary. Because so many, you can, there's 2 objections. One is that it's a fault in the plate, and the other one is just to say it's space trash.
Yeah,
So if you can eliminate both of the skeptics' objections, that strengthens your evidence.
exactly. So that's going to be the next challenge. And of course, just trying to share the discovery with people, because I think it's important for them to know. And media are super scared of it. I notice, like mainstream media, they are very scared. So if they report, they will undermine one part of the findings, or they will try to play it down, or yeah. So, but people need to know what we have in our skies.
Exactly, exactly. And that they're here for a reason, and we need to pay attention, and we need to learn how to communicate with them intelligibly to find out more and how we can collaborate in some meaningful way because they've come out of concern. I think that's the simplest explanation for your
I agree.
evidence. Yeah,
I agree. I think it's the simplest way of looking at it.
yeah,
Whatever they are, whoever they are, and their their objects are here for a reason.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and I don't think it's just a hobby for them.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, Beatrice, thank you so, so much. This has been a delight. And this is history, everybody. This is a breakthrough at many different levels, not only for the existence of UFOs, but for the reason why they're here. And for us to be able to connect those 2 dots, I think is monumental for human history and for the next phase of human growth and development, given the fact that we are closer to a nuclear exchange, the very thing that they came to Earth to warn us about than ever before. So learning the language of consciousness right now, learning how to understand these beings and learning how to communicate with them is really what's up for humanity. So Beatrice, bless your heart. All strength to you and your colleagues. You've done an extraordinary historical service for all of humankind, and
Thanks.
we salute you.
Thank you, Thomas.
And that'll do it for us for today, everybody. You can uh, join the after chat. Beatrice, I don't know whether you can join the after chat for a minute or two.
Sure.
You'll see the link in the chat box. You receive the link in your Zoom reminders for today. And then next week, we're going to have Dahlia Burgoyne, who's a psychic who engages in mind sight with blindfolds on. She can see an extraordinary amount, including the driver's license you've got in your wallet in the other room. And that's about consciousness and how we open our human facilities that we all have to the kind of clairvoyance that's required to communicate with the UFOs, with the extraterrestrial beings who are now amongst us. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Beatrice. See you next week. See you in the after chat. Bye for now.